The first thing my daughter saw that morning wasn't the man. It was the pair of black fighting gloves flying through the air. They landed at my feet with a dull thud. The neighborhood barbecue went silent. 43 people stopped talking. Children stopped running. Even the music from the speakers seemed to disappear beneath the weight of what everyone knew was about to happen. Marcus Caldwell smiled, as if he'd already won.
"Put them on,"
he said loudly enough for every house on the block to hear.
"If you don't..."
He glanced toward my 11-year-old daughter standing behind me.
"She gets to watch everyone find out what kind of coward her mother really is."
The crowd waited. Some looked away. Some stared. Not one person stepped forward. Behind Marcus, his billionaire father lifted a glass of whiskey and laughed.
"Teach the old soldier a lesson," he called out. "She's been acting tougher than she is."
I looked down at the gloves, then at my daughter. Emma wasn't crying. Not yet. She was trying to be brave. But I knew that look. I'd seen it before. Not here. Not in Virginia. I'd seen it on the faces of young Marines caught in their first ambush. The moment when fear arrives. But training hasn't. I bent down, picked up the gloves, brushed a little dirt from the leather. Then I looked Marcus directly in the eyes. "You've made one mistake." He laughed.
"Oh, yeah?"
"You assumed this was a fight." A smile slowly crossed my face. "It isn't. It's a lesson." 3 months earlier. Life had finally become quiet. For the first time in almost 15 years, I woke up without the sound of helicopters overhead. No encrypted radio. No armored convoys. No classified briefings waiting before sunrise. Just birds, coffee, and my daughter humming badly while she packed her school bag. Peace felt strange, like wearing someone else's clothes. My name is Claire Bennett. According to every public record in America, I worked as an administrative analyst for the Department of Defense. 42 years old, divorced, 1 daughter, nothing special. That was exactly how I wanted it. The truth sat inside a locked safe, beneath winter blankets in my basement. 3 bronze stars, a silver star, boxes of deployment photographs nobody outside my old unit had ever seen, letters from soldiers who came home because someone had made the right decision under impossible circumstances, and 1 folded American flag. The only thing my husband ever left behind. Most mornings followed the same rhythm. Coffee first, then breakfast. Then I'd stand beside the kitchen window while Emma searched the backyard for frogs, butterflies, or whatever adventure 11-year-old girls found before school. Old habits refused to die. Without thinking, I'd scan every parked vehicle on the street, count exits, notice unfamiliar faces, measure distances between houses. Not because I expected danger, because people like me stop doing those things only after they're buried. Emma thought it was funny. "You always look outside before opening the front door." "I like fresh air." She giggled. "No. You like checking if aliens landed." I laughed harder than the joke deserved. "If aliens show up, I'll let you know." She saluted dramatically. "Yes, ma'am." Moments like that reminded me why I'd left everything behind. Not because I was tired of serving. Because Emma deserved a childhood that didn't include armed escorts, secure compounds, and emergency evacuation drills. She deserved scraped knees, birthday parties, math homework, treehouses, ordinary things. I intended to protect those ordinary things with everything I had. The moving trucks arrived on a Tuesday, 6 of them, followed by a black Rolls-Royce Cullinan that rolled into the neighboring driveway like it owned the entire street. Our neighborhood wasn't poor, mostly teachers, retired police officers, small business owners, comfortable. Quiet. The mansion next door had sat empty for nearly a year. Now it belonged to Nathan Caldwell. Everyone knew the name. His face appeared in business magazines, television interviews, political fundraisers. His logistics company supplied freight across half the East Coast. Money wasn't something Nathan possessed. It was something he expected everyone else to notice. Within 2 days, contractors replaced the fence separating our yards, without asking, without speaking to me. The old wooden fence disappeared. In its place stood a glossy black iron barrier, nearly 8 feet tall. Except 3 feet of it crossed onto my property. I walked outside, carrying the property survey I'd received when buying the house. One of the workers looked uncomfortable. "You might want to check this." Before he could answer, another voice interrupted. "There's no mistake." Nathan Caldwell stepped out of the mansion, wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than my first car. He never looked at the survey, only at me. "The fence stays. It's on my land." He smiled politely. "Now it's not." I unfolded the survey. "The county map disagrees." He didn't even glance at it. "You can spend years arguing with lawyers. Or," he reached into his jacket, pulled out a checkbook. "I'll buy that strip. I already own it. I'll pay double. It's not for sale." His smile faded by exactly half an inch. People like Nathan weren't accustomed to hearing that word. No. Such a simple word. Strange how often it reveals someone's true character. He placed the blank check back into his pocket. "I hope you're not one of those people who mistake stubbornness for strength. I hope you're not one of those people who mistake money for permission." For 3 long seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled again, only this time, there wasn't a trace of kindness behind it. "We'll talk again." I doubt it. He walked away without another word. The workers continued building. I watched them finish the fence. Then I quietly photographed every inch of where it crossed my property. Evidence first, always. Emotion later. Emma hated the new fence. It blocks the sunset. She was right. Every evening we'd sit on the back steps eating ice cream while the sky turned orange beyond the trees. Now, all we saw was black steel. "It's ugly." "It is." "Can we paint flowers on it?" I smiled. "I don't think the neighbors would like that." She grinned. "Maybe that's why we should." I laughed. For a few seconds, everything felt normal again. Until a heavy fist slammed against the metal fence from the other side. Clang! Emma jumped. The spoon fell from her hand. A deep voice laughed. "Hope that didn't scare anybody." Another hit. Clang! Then another. Clang! I slowly stood, walked to the fence, and looked through the narrow gap between 2 bars. Nathan's son stood there, 6'4", built like a heavyweight fighter, tattoo sleeves, wrapped hands, a smug grin stretching across his face. He bounced lightly on his feet before driving another punch into the steel. Clang! "You hear that?" he shouted. "That's what happens when weak people live next to strong ones." Emma quietly moved behind me. Her small fingers slipped into my hand. I squeezed them gently, never taking my eyes off the man smiling through the fence. Something told me this wasn't about a property line. This family hadn't moved next door by coincidence, and before long, they were going to discover something that no amount of money could ever buy. Fear. It cuts both ways. The punching didn't stop the next day, or the day after that. Every morning at exactly 6:15, the metallic clang echoed across our backyard. Clang! 5 seconds. Clang! Another 5. Clang! Always the same rhythm. Too deliberate to be exercise. Too consistent to be coincidence. He wasn't training. He was sending a message. I never reacted. That seemed to bother him more than anything else. 2 weeks passed. The Caldwell estate transformed into something that looked more like a private resort than a family home. Luxury cars came and went. Landscape crews replaced perfectly healthy trees with imported palms. A private security company installed cameras that pointed not only toward their own property, but toward mine. One afternoon, I walked outside carrying a rake. The newest camera slowly rotated until its lens followed me. I smiled. Then I raised the rake handle and pointed toward it. Wrong direction. By dinner time, the camera had magically turned away. Interesting. Nathan wasn't interested in breaking laws. He preferred making other people believe he could. That was a more useful weapon. Emma started middle school 3 days later. She loved everything about it, except the walk home. The shortest route passed directly in front of the Caldwell house. The first afternoon she came through the front door unusually quiet. No excited stories, no homework complaints, no requests for snacks. She simply walked upstairs, closed her bedroom door. That alone told me something was wrong. I knocked gently. "You busy?" A tiny voice answered. "No." She sat on her bed, hugging one of her stuffed animals. "What happened?" She hesitated. "Nothing." I waited. Silence often tells the truth faster than questions. Finally, she whispered, "That man." "Which man?" "The big one. Nathan's son." "What did he do?" "He asked why we still lived in such a tiny house." I stayed quiet. "He said rich people usually buy ugly houses to tear them down." She looked at me. "Are they going to tear our house down?" "No." But he sounded sure. I sat beside her. "Emma, some people believe money means they own everything. Do they?" "No. They only own what other people are willing to surrender." She thought about that for a moment. "So, we're not surrendering?" I smiled. "Not today." The following Saturday, I finally met Nathan's son properly. His name was Ryan. 26, former amateur MMA champion. More muscles than patience. He caught me repairing a loose fence post near the backyard. "You know," he called over casually, "my father would have bought you a brand new fence." "I like this one." "It looks cheap." "It still stands." He laughed. "Everything has a price." "Not everything." "You military people always say things like that." I slowly looked up. That caught my attention. "I never told you I was military." His smile froze. only for a fraction of a second. Long enough. Then it returned.
Just guessed.
No.
You didn't. He shrugged. People talk.
Interesting. I had gone to great lengths to erase my past. Very few neighbors even knew I'd served. Yet somehow, Ryan already did. I drove another nail into the fence.
You should be careful believing everything people tell you.
He leaned against the iron fence.
You should be careful living next to people who always get what they want.
I stood, measured the distance between us. 3.5 feet. Comfortable. His posture looked relaxed, but his shoulders stayed loaded. His weight rested too heavily on his front leg. A man who expected confrontation. Not today. I picked up my toolbox.
Have a good afternoon.
His voice followed me.
I heard soldiers are good at taking orders.
I didn't answer. He wanted a reaction. He didn't get one. That evening, my older sister Rebecca came over. We hadn't been close in years. Not after she'd married into one of the wealthiest families in Northern Virginia. Still, she smiled as if nothing had changed. She placed a designer handbag on my kitchen counter.
You look tired. I've been busy.
She glanced around the room. Same old furniture, same worn dining table. Emma's school drawing still covered the refrigerator. Rebecca sighed. You could have a better life. I'm happy.
You don't look happy.
I don't need marble floors to be happy. She laughed softly.
No, but they help.
Emma quietly walked into the kitchen, carrying a math workbook. Hi, Aunt Rebecca. Rebecca barely looked up. Hello, sweetheart. Her attention returned to me. Nathan mentioned you refused a generous offer. It wasn't generous.
It was business.
It was my property. She folded her arms. Claire, sometimes pride becomes expensive. No, integrity is expensive. Pride is usually free. Her smile disappeared. You always have to make everything difficult.
And you've become comfortable making everything easy.
The kitchen fell silent. She picked up her purse. I hope you rethink your position.
So do I.
She paused. You know, Ryan has quite a temper. I looked directly at her. Is that a warning? She didn't answer. She simply walked toward the front door. Before leaving, she turned back. Not everyone who smiles at you is your enemy. And not everyone who shares your blood is your family. For the first time, she had nothing to say. 3 days later, Emma was washing my old SUV after school. It was something we always did together on Wednesdays. She sprayed soap across the windshield while singing to herself. I was inside making sandwiches. Then, crack! Not a crash, not breaking glass. Plastic. Hard plastic. I reached the kitchen window just in time to see Ryan pulling his hand back out of my driver's window. The radio knob lay on the driveway in 2 broken pieces. Emma stared at it in complete shock. Ryan looked down at her.
That music was annoying.
I wasn't... She couldn't even finish her sentence. He smiled, coldly.
If you want to make noise, buy better speakers.
He turned and started walking away, as though he'd done nothing at all. Emma's lip trembled. Tears filled her eyes. Not because of the radio. Because, for the first time in her life, an adult had intentionally frightened her. I quietly placed the kitchen knife on the counter, walked outside, and started toward Ryan. He heard my footsteps, stopped, turned slowly. The smug smile never left his face. Neither of us spoke. Not yet, but something had changed. He believed he had just intimidated a quiet single mother. What he didn't realize was that he'd just crossed the one line I never allowed anyone to cross. My daughter. Ryan stopped halfway across the driveway. Slowly, deliberately. He looked over his shoulder just enough to see me approaching. Then he smiled, not because he found anything amusing, because he expected me to yell. People like Ryan depended on emotional reactions. Anger gave them control. I had learned long ago, control belonged to the calmest person in the room. I stopped 4 feet away, close enough to hear his breathing, far enough that neither of us occupied the other's personal space. My daughter was talking to the radio. I spoke quietly. You broke it. He shrugged. It was junk. It belonged to my daughter. It belonged to an old SUV that's worth less than one of my watches. Emma stood frozen beside the driver's door. Soap still dripped from the sponge in her hand. Ryan glanced at her, then back at me. What? You want me to apologize? No. I want you to understand something. His smile widened. I'm listening. If you ever speak to my daughter again, make sure it's the smartest decision you've ever made. He laughed, a loud, mocking laugh. What are you going to do? Write a complaint? Call the HOA? I held his eyes. No. I'll simply remember. For the first time, his smile hesitated. Only for a heartbeat. Then it returned. You're weird. So I've been told. He walked away. Halfway across his lawn, he picked up the broken radio knob, looked back at Emma, and tossed it into the trash can, like a trophy. Emma didn't say much that evening. She pushed vegetables around her plate without eating them. Every few minutes she'd glance toward the kitchen window, as if expecting Ryan to appear outside again. After dinner, I found her sitting on the back porch hugging her knees. You okay? She nodded. Too quickly. Did he scare you? No. Another lie. Children don't become quiet without a reason. I sat beside her. When I was your age, my father taught me something. She looked up. He said courage isn't being unafraid. It's deciding fear doesn't get to choose for you. She thought about that. So, it's okay if I'm scared? I smiled. It's normal. What matters is what you do next. She leaned against my shoulder. I don't like him. I know. He looks at people like they're bugs. That sentence stayed with me. Children often describe people more accurately than adults. The next morning, I drove to the county planning office. The survey clearly showed Nathan's new fence crossed 37 inches onto my property. The clerk printed another certified copy. Would you like us to notify your neighbor? Please. He smiled. They probably won't like it. They don't have to. They just have to move it. 3 days later, they didn't move the fence. Instead, Nathan hired lawyers. By Friday afternoon, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox. A legal demand. Not requesting, demanding. It accused me of interfering with construction, harassing contractors, threatening employees. Every accusation was false. Every sentence had been written by someone expecting intimidation to work better than evidence. I quietly placed the papers inside a folder, then added photographs, survey maps, timestamps, copies, always copies. The military had taught me something simple. The side that documents first usually wins. Saturday morning brought another surprise. Rebecca arrived unannounced. Again. This time she wasn't smiling. "You need to stop." I poured 2 cups of coffee. "Good morning to you too." She ignored the cup. "Nathan is furious." I noticed. "He says you're making everything harder than it needs to be." "I haven't done anything." "You filed paperwork." "I corrected paperwork." She folded her arms. "Why can't you just sell?" "Because it's my home." "You could buy a bigger one." "I don't want a bigger one." She stared at me as though I'd spoken another language. "You really don't understand people like Nathan." "No, I understand them perfectly. They're used to hearing yes. And I don't owe anyone that answer." Rebecca rubbed her forehead. "You've changed." "No." I finally stopped pretending. She looked toward Emma's drawings on the refrigerator. Crayon rainbows, stick figures, a family of 2 holding hands. Rebecca sighed. "Do you know what Nathan told me yesterday?" "I can imagine." He said, "There are ways to make stubborn neighbors disappear without breaking the law." The kitchen became completely silent. She realized too late what she'd admitted. I slowly set my coffee cup onto the table. "What exactly did he mean by that?" I don't know. You do." "I shouldn't have said anything." "No, you definitely should have." She grabbed her purse. "I came here to help." "No." "You came here to convince me." She stopped at the doorway. For several seconds, she looked almost like the sister I remembered. Then she quietly said, "Just be careful." After she left, I replayed one sentence over and over in my head. There are ways to make stubborn neighbors disappear. People say things like that when they're bluffing, or when they've watched it happen before. Monday afternoon, Emma came home carrying a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me without speaking. It was a drawing. Our house. Our old SUV. Me. Her. And across the front lawn, someone had written in thick black marker, "Move or else." My heartbeat slowed. Not faster. Slower. Years of training had taught me something strange. The more dangerous the situation, the calmer I became. I knelt beside Emma. "Who gave you this?" She swallowed. "It was inside my backpack." "Did anyone see who put it there?" She shook her head. "I thought maybe it was a joke." I looked at the words again. No, this wasn't a joke. This was escalation, and people who escalate rarely stop on their own. That night, for the first time since leaving the military, I unlocked the fireproof safe in my basement. Inside, beneath medals, photographs, and folded uniforms, rested a small black notebook. It wasn't a diary. It was something far more dangerous. a notebook containing every lesson I'd learned about dealing with predators. I carried it upstairs, placed it on the kitchen table, opened to the first page. Across the top, in my own handwriting, were 5 words. Never wait for the second attack. I didn't call the police. Not yet. People often ask why. The answer is simple. Evidence without a pattern becomes one incident. Evidence with a pattern becomes a case. Nathan Caldwell had spent his entire career making sure every cruel thing he did could be explained away. A broken radio, a misunderstanding, a fence dispute, a childish prank at school. Each incident looked small by itself. Together, they revealed exactly who he was. And I intended to make sure everyone saw the complete picture. The next morning, I drove Emma to school myself. She stayed unusually close as we walked toward the entrance. Normally, she'd wave goodbye halfway across the parking lot. Today, she didn't let go of my hand until the last possible second. "I'll pick you up after school." She nodded. "Promise?" "I've never broken one." She smiled weakly before disappearing inside. As I turned back toward my SUV, a black Escalade slowly rolled past the school entrance. The driver's window lowered. Nathan Caldwell. He smiled like an old friend. "Beautiful school." I didn't answer. "Kids should feel safe here." Still nothing. He rested one arm on the window. "It'd be a shame if your little property dispute started affecting her." That was it. The first direct threat. Quiet. Polite. Almost impossible to prove. Exactly the kind of threat men like Nathan preferred. I memorized every word. Then I looked at him. "If anything ever happens to my daughter, you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you'd chosen a different neighborhood." For the first time, his smile disappeared completely. The light turned green. He drove away without another word. That afternoon, I filed an official report anyway. Not because I expected immediate action, because timelines matter. Officer Daniel Harper listened carefully while reviewing the photographs. The fence. The broken radio. The anonymous note. The comment outside the school. He frowned. "None of this alone is enough." "I know. But together?" He leaned back. "Together, it starts looking different." He copied every document. "I'll keep this open." "Thank you." As I stood to leave, he asked one question. "Were you really in the Army?" I smiled politely. "A long time ago." He nodded. "I figured." "How?" "You don't look scared." For almost a week, nothing happened. No loud music, no pounding on the fence, no sarcastic comments. Nathan's house became strangely quiet. Too quiet. Experience had taught me something. Real predators don't stop hunting. They simply change tactics. Friday afternoon confirmed it. Emma came running into the house. "Mom!" She was breathless. "My bike!" "What about it?" "It's gone!" The purple bicycle she'd ridden since her 10th birthday had disappeared from the front porch. I walked outside. The security camera above my garage had captured everything. At exactly 2:41 p.m., a moving truck stopped in front of Nathan's house. Workers unloaded landscaping supplies. During the confusion, Ryan casually walked across my yard, picked up Emma's bicycle, and wheeled it behind the iron fence. Not hidden, displayed, leaning against the wall inside their property, like a hunting trophy. Emma pointed toward it. There! I told you! I gently squeezed her shoulder. I know. Without another word, I walked to the Caldwell gate. Ryan was lifting weights beside the pool. He spotted me immediately.
What?
You have something that belongs to my daughter. He glanced toward the bicycle. Oh. That. I thought someone abandoned it. It was on my porch. He shrugged. Easy mistake. Return it. He smiled. Come get it. The gate remained locked. He knew exactly what he was doing. I stood there for several seconds, then turned around, walked home. Emma looked confused. You're not taking it back? Not today. But it's mine. I know. She looked close to tears. I don't understand. I knelt beside her. Sometimes winning too early costs you the whole battle. Saturday morning, the neighborhood woke to flashing lights. 3 police cruisers, 2 county inspectors, a tow truck. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering, pointing. Officer Harper stood beside Nathan's front gate, holding a search warrant. Ryan looked furious. Nathan looked even worse. The bicycle sat exactly where I'd left it, still visible, still recorded by my camera, still untouched. Harper held up a printed photograph. Mr. Caldwell, would you like to explain why a bicycle reported stolen yesterday is sitting inside your locked property? Ryan stepped forward. I was bringing it back. Harper didn't even look at him. Interesting. He held up another photograph. This picture was taken yesterday afternoon. Then another. And this one. Finally, he played the security footage from my camera. Every neighbor watched in complete silence as Ryan casually wheeled Emma's bicycle through his gate. No urgency. No confusion. No attempt to return it. Just theft. Plain and simple. Nathan slowly turned toward his son. You idiot. Ryan swallowed. I was just messing with her. Officer Harper snapped his notebook shut. Unfortunately, Virginia law doesn't recognize just messing with her as a legal defense. Ryan's face turned white. He had expected another warning, another pass. Instead, Harper stepped closer. Mr. Caldwell, you're under arrest for petite larceny. The entire neighborhood froze. Emma quietly squeezed my hand. Mom, is he going to jail? I looked down at her. For today, he's finally going to learn that actions have consequences. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't over. Because men like Nathan Caldwell didn't lose gracefully. They lost. And then they made someone else pay for it. Ryan spent only one night in county jail. Nathan made sure of that. By 9 o'clock the following morning, 3 attorneys, a bondsman, and 2 luxury SUVs had already arrived outside the courthouse. Money moved quickly. Justice usually didn't. Still, an arrest leaves fingerprints that even wealth can't erase. The local newspaper published a short article. Businessman's son arrested after neighbor's bicycle found inside gated estate. No front-page headline. No television cameras. Just enough attention to bruise Nathan Caldwell's ego. For a man obsessed with reputation, that was far more painful than a fine. Monday morning, I stepped onto my porch with a cup of coffee. Ryan was already outside. He wasn't lifting weights. He wasn't smiling. He simply stood on the opposite side of the fence, staring at my house, waiting. When he saw me, he slowly applauded. Clap, clap, clap. You embarrassed me. His voice was calm, too calm. I embarrassed you? You called the cops. I reported a theft. You knew they'd arrest me. No, I knew they'd investigate. He stepped closer to the fence. You think this is over? I think it's your turn to make a decision. What decision? You can grow up. Or you can keep proving me right. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might climb the fence. Instead, he smiled. I've got a better idea. Then he walked away. That worried me more than shouting ever could. 3 days later, Emma's teacher called. Mrs. Bennett? Yes. I'm afraid there was a small incident today. What happened? There were rumors going around. My stomach tightened. What kind of rumors? Someone told several students your military service ended because you were removed for psychological problems. I closed my eyes. Interesting. Nathan had changed tactics. He wasn't attacking me anymore. He was attacking my credibility. My daughter? She defended you. 2 boys laughed. Emma pushed one of them. I sighed. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Emma sat outside the principal's office, swinging her feet. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. I'm sorry. What happened? They said you're crazy. They said the army threw you away. They said Ryan's dad knows everybody. I hugged her tightly. Did you hit anyone? She nodded. 1 shove. I smiled despite myself. Not ideal. He called you a monster. She looked up at me. I know you're not. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. Listen carefully. There will always be people who attack someone they can't control. It says more about them than it ever will about us. She sniffed. Promise? I promise. That evening, Officer Harper knocked on my front door. He wasn't in uniform, just jeans and a polo shirt. Mind if I come in? I nodded. He sat at the kitchen table while Emma worked upstairs. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. How much do you actually know about Nathan Caldwell? I know he's rich. I know he likes intimidating people. Harper slowly slid a folder across the table. He has 12 civil complaints, 4 lawsuits. 3 former business partners disappeared financially after refusing to cooperate with him. I looked up. Criminal charges? Never. Enough money? Harper smiled without humor. Enough lawyers. He leaned forward. But this time feels different. Why? Because for the first time, someone isn't afraid of him. I didn't answer. Harper stood. If anything happens, call me immediately. I will. As he reached the door, he stopped. One more thing. He hired a private investigator yesterday. I looked at him. To investigate me? Harper nodded. I thought you should know. The investigator arrived 2 days later. He wasn't subtle. Dark sedan, cheap sunglasses, camera with an oversized lens. He spent nearly 4 hours parked across the street photographing my house, my mailbox, my SUV, even Emma riding her bicycle. Most people would have felt intimidated. Instead, I made him a sandwich, wrapped it in foil, walked across the street, knocked on his window. He looked genuinely confused. I figured you've been sitting here all morning. You probably haven't eaten. He stared at the sandwich. I can't accept this. You can. I know who hired you. His face changed. You do? I also know you're just doing your job. He hesitated before taking the sandwich. Thank you. You're welcome. I started walking back toward my house. Mrs. Bennett? I turned. You don't seem worried. I smiled. People usually aren't, when they have nothing to hide. That evening, the investigator delivered his report to Nathan Caldwell. It contained exactly what I'd expected: age, address, employment, vehicle registration, tax records. Everything publicly available. Nothing else. According to every government database, Claire Bennett was nothing more than a quiet Department of Defense analyst with an ordinary civilian career. Nathan laughed when he finished reading. So that's it? A paper pusher. His attorney nodded. Looks that way. Nathan leaned back in his leather chair. I expected more. So did I. Then, Nathan made the biggest mistake of his life. He picked up his phone, smiled confidently, and said 6 words that would destroy everything he'd spent 30 years building. Get me someone at the Pentagon. Nathan Caldwell had built his entire life on one belief: everyone had a price. Judges, contractors, city inspectors, politicians. If they couldn't be bought, they could usually be pressured. And if pressure didn't work, money eventually would. He had never met anyone who didn't bend. Not until he met me. The call to the Pentagon lasted less than 4 minutes. Nathan introduced himself as a respected defense contractor, a patriotic businessman, a loyal supporter of military programs. Then his tone changed. There is an unstable woman employed by your department. He spoke with absolute confidence. She assaulted my son. She has anger issues. I don't believe someone like her should be working for the Department of Defense. The voice on the other end remained calm. I understand. Nathan smiled. I assume you'll investigate immediately. We certainly will. And one more thing. Nathan leaned back in his chair. My company is preparing to bid on the major transportation contract. I would hate for this unfortunate situation to affect our willingness to continue supporting the government. It wasn't a request. It was a threat. Silence filled the line. Then the voice replied. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. The call ended. Nathan poured himself a glass of bourbon. He actually celebrated. 22 minutes later, my secure government phone vibrated. Not rang. Vibrated. A setting reserved for encrypted internal calls. I answered immediately. Claire. Good morning, General. General Michael Donovan laughed before saying anything else. I've just had the most entertaining phone call of my week. So I heard. You already know? I had a feeling. He chuckled again. Your neighbor believes he can have you fired. I assumed that was coming. He also attempted to leverage a pending defense contract. That made me set my coffee down. So he actually said it?
Word for word.
The general's tone hardened. He threatened the integrity of a federal procurement process. That alone is enough. I remained silent. There was no point interrupting. Claire, I have one question. Yes, sir.
Has anything this man accused you of actually happened?
No, sir.
I expected that answer.
Another pause. Then,
I've instructed the Inspector General to review every communication connected to his company.
my eyes drifted toward the kitchen window. Nathan was outside talking to landscapers, completely unaware. He just disqualified himself, didn't he? The general sighed.
He did a little more than that.
By Thursday morning, the Defense Procurement Integrity Office had opened a formal inquiry. Not into me, into Nathan Caldwell. Emails were preserved, phone records requested, lobbying contacts reviewed. Conflict of interest investigators moved quietly, professionally, without warning anyone. That's how federal investigations worked. They didn't announce themselves. They simply arrived. Nathan still believed he was winning. A black limousine pulled into his driveway shortly after lunch. He stepped outside wearing a tailored navy suit, shook hands with two executives, laughed loudly enough for half the street to hear. He wanted everyone watching, especially me. As the limousine pulled away, he caught me watering flowers.
You'll be moving soon,
he smiled.
I've got people asking questions about you.
I returned the watering can to the ground. Funny. So do I. His smile faded. What does that mean? I think you'll find out. 3 days later, he did. At exactly 8:12 Monday morning, 3 black government SUVs rolled through the neighborhood. No flashing lights, no sirens, just quiet efficiency. They stopped in front of the Caldwell estate. 4 men stepped out, dark suits, federal credentials. One woman carrying a hard case, another carrying a stack of sealed folders. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Garage doors opened halfway. Nathan walked outside smiling. He assumed they were there to discuss the contract. One of the agents held out an identification wallet.
Mr. Nathan Caldwell?
Yes.
We're with the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General.
His smile remained, barely. We'd like to ask you several questions regarding your recent communications with federal procurement officials. Nathan laughed nervously.
Of course.
This way. The lead investigator didn't move. No. We'll conduct the interview here. The smile disappeared. Completely. What is this about? The investigator opened a folder.
You attempted to influence an active procurement process.
You made employment demands regarding a federal employee. You referenced financial leverage connected to a pending contract. Nathan's face lost all color. I think there's been a misunderstanding. The investigator looked him directly in the eye. We're here to determine exactly that. Across the street, I stood beside my mailbox holding Emma's backpack. She looked up at me. Mom, who are those people? I smiled softly. People who ask important questions. Nathan looked across the street. For the first time since moving into the neighborhood, there was no confidence left in his eyes. Only uncertainty. Only fear. He had finally entered a battlefield where money couldn't buy cover, and where every word he'd spoken had already become evidence. The interview lasted nearly 3 hours.
Not because Nathan refused to answer questions, because every answer created two new ones. The investigators asked about his phone call, his political contacts, his attorneys, his lobbying records. Then they asked about something he never expected. Have you ever attempted to influence a federal employee through intimidation? Nathan frowned. Of course not. The investigator quietly slid a printed transcript across the patio table. It wasn't just the phone call. It contained witness statements. Officer Harper's report, copies of my complaint, the threatening comments outside Emma's school, the property dispute, even the theft of Emma's bicycle. Nathan stared at the pages. His confidence began to crack. This has nothing to do with a contract. The lead investigator folded his hands. It has everything to do with judgment. Across the street, Emma stood beside me on the porch. She watched the black SUVs with wide eyes. Are they going to arrest him? I don't know. You usually know. I smiled. No. I usually prepare. She leaned against my side. I don't like seeing people scared. Neither did I. Even people like Nathan. Because fear has a way of reminding us how human everyone really is. The investigators finally left just after noon. Nathan didn't wave. He didn't even notice the neighbors watching. He simply walked back inside his mansion and closed the front door. Hard. The sound echoed across the street. 48 hours later, the news became public. Lewis Caldwell Logistics, one of the fastest-growing transportation companies on the East Coast, had officially been removed from consideration for a federal transportation contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Business reporters described it as an unexpected compliance decision. Financial analysts called it a devastating setback. Nathan called it something else. He called everyone he knew. Senators, consultants, former generals, lobbyists. Nobody could reverse the decision. Because this wasn't politics anymore. It was procurement law. Once the integrity review began, the process belonged to the government, not to Nathan Caldwell. The consequences spread faster than anyone expected. Banks delayed loan approvals. Insurance providers requested additional reviews. 2 corporate clients quietly suspended negotiations. Investors began asking uncomfortable questions. Nathan spent less time shouting at landscapers and more time arguing with accountants. The luxury cars stopped arriving. The catered parties disappeared. Even the lights inside the mansion seemed dimmer. Money hadn't vanished overnight, but confidence had. And in business, confidence is often worth more than cash. Ryan changed, too. He stopped training in the backyard, stopped pounding on the fence, stopped staring at our house. Sometimes I'd see him sitting alone beside the empty pool, looking at his phone, refreshing social media. People had found the arrest record, the bicycle incident, videos from neighbors, comments multiplied by the hour. For a man who built his identity around appearing strong, public embarrassment hit harder than any punch. One afternoon, there was a knock at my front door. When I opened it, Rebecca stood there. She looked exhausted. No designer sunglasses, no expensive handbag, no perfect smile. Just my sister. For the first time in years, I owe you an apology. I said nothing. She looked down at her hands. I kept telling myself that staying quiet wasn't the same as choosing a side. A tear rolled down her cheek.
But it was. I let the silence sit between us. I should have believed you. You should have. I was afraid. I know. I thought if I stood against Nathan, I'd lose everything. I looked past her toward the mansion. You did. She closed her eyes. I know. For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, "Can you ever forgive me?" I answered honestly, "I don't know. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. Trust isn't rebuilt because someone says they're sorry. It's rebuilt because they spend time proving they mean it." She nodded. I understand. Then, she quietly walked away. 3 weeks later, a moving company arrived. Not 6 trucks this time. Just one. No luxury vehicles, no contractors, no photographers. Neighbors watched from porches without saying a word. Nathan supervised the loading himself. He looked older, smaller, as though the weight of the past month had stolen years from his life. Ryan carried boxes without looking at anyone. Halfway through the afternoon, he stopped near the property line. For several seconds, he stared at the iron fence his father had built. Then he picked up a wrench, removed the first bolt, then another, and another. By sunset, the fence was gone. Nothing remained except the original property markers. The boundary had finally returned to where it always belonged. That evening, Emma and I carried 2 folding chairs into the backyard. For the first time in months, we could see the sunset again. Orange, gold, soft purple clouds drifting beyond the trees. Emma smiled. I missed this. So did I. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Mom? Yes? Were you ever really scared? I looked toward the empty house next door, then at the fading sunlight. Every day. She blinked. But you never looked scared. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Being brave doesn't mean fear disappears. It means fear doesn't get to make your decisions. She smiled. I think I understand now. I kissed the top of her head. The evening breeze carried the scent of fresh cut grass through the yard. No pounding on metal, no shouting, no threats, just the quiet sound I'd fought so hard to protect. Sometimes people believe strength is the loudest voice in the neighborhood, the biggest house, the deepest bank account. They're wrong. Real strength is building a peaceful life and refusing to surrender it to anyone.